Are you planning to expense this? When I expressed my opinion to Karen, the manager holding a first-class airline ticket, her eyebrow twitched. It doesn't affect your money, so it doesn't matter, does it? You will be my slave forever. Just follow me quietly. She snapped back and started walking toward her seat. I wasn't particularly looking forward to it, but my first time in first class was overwhelming. The spacious seats offered a decent amount of privacy. I was amazed that the wealthy turned travel into an experience, but Karen was lost in thought, staring into the distance. How much time had passed? Not even an hour had passed since takeoff when a young flight attendant, looking pale, reported to a senior-looking attendant. The captain and co-pilot have collapsed. Her voice reached our ears, and the commotion quickly spread. Even Karen's face turned pale, her eyes wide open. We needed to act before the cabin descended into panic. I stood up and declared, "Leave it to me. I'll fly the plane. My name is Neil. I am in my 40s and work in sales. However, it's not a company I started working for as a new graduate. I switched to this job 5 years ago, so my experience is limited. The reason I decided to switch to this company was that I had some knowledge about the parts and products the company manufactures. My previous job was entirely unrelated to sales. Therefore, I often find myself confused by the unfamiliar work, and my sales performance is far from impressive. But I enjoy introducing products based on what I know and the needs of my clients. The joy of closing a deal when the client is satisfied is unmatched. Of course, the company doesn't exist for my satisfaction. As a publicly traded company, it must deliver results that satisfy shareholders and pursue profits, which is the essence of a company in a capitalist society. I understand that it can't be helped. That's why my lack of focus on sales performance often earns me scoldings from Karen. Neil, could I have a moment? Karen signaled me with her hand, and I approached her desk. When she stood up with documents in hand, I sighed inwardly. As expected, she headed for the meeting room. When she calls me here, it's usually to lecture me about my sales performance. Neil, what is the meaning of this? Karen slapped the documents on the table in front of me with a loud clap. I immediately understood what she wanted to say when I saw the documents. They needed more time to decide on our product order, so it wasn't an immediate decision. On a recent business trip, I was supposed to close a deal for a self-generation project with a large company. However, after hearing them out, it became clear that more discussions were needed to ensure the order matched their needs. If successful, it would improve their power generation efficiency and significantly reduce the costs of implementing our products. So, we decided to reconsider and schedule another meeting. However, Karen didn't seem convinced by my explanation and questioned me sternly. So, what benefit does this bring to our company? What you're doing seems like a loss for us. But is it really good to only think about our own profits? I understood what Karen was trying to say. My proposal would lower our product's order price significantly, even though it would reduce the client's costs. Given the size of the deal, the loss isn't small. Despite my limited experience, I instinctively knew that pursuing only our own profits wouldn't lead to good outcomes. Business, as I understand it, involves generating money by bringing joy to the client. If we can't build a win-win relationship, the company will decline. I believe, without concrete evidence, that making proposals that benefit the client will eventually come back to us. Karen looked down at me with cold eyes and sighed deeply. This is no time for idealistic talk. If you keep doing things like this, the company won't survive. Understand? This isn't just your problem. Each employee has a family, and we carry that responsibility. Don't act on your own whims. Indeed, if sales don't materialize, it affects the company's survival. However, this deal still secures a sufficient profit margin. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to propose it. As I was contemplating how to explain this to Karen, she burst out at me with red eyes. You probably think I'm just a younger woman talking big. No matter what you think, I am your boss. Just follow your superior's orders quietly. I have no intention of looking down on Karen because she's a woman or younger. On the contrary, I respect her for demonstrating her managerial skills despite being younger than me. Although I wish she wouldn't be so obsessed with quotas and numbers or have such a high-handed attitude. I understand that these stem from her insecurities. If you don't agree, then work your way up to management. Then I might acknowledge you. Although, it's probably impossible for someone as incompetent as you. With that, Karen threw the documents at me and left the meeting room. I don't have any intention of becoming a manager, I just want to live a simple life without dwelling on the past. If I spent more time chasing quotas or changed my sales methods to be more aggressive, I could probably achieve some results. However, I don't mind being called incompetent because I have no interest in the race for promotion. I intend to stick to my beliefs and not be too constrained by Karen. One day after work, I was having dinner with Michaela, a colleague. Michaela works in the accounting department and has been a mentor to me since I was new to the job, teaching me about expense reporting and other things. Although she's in her early 30s, she's quick and sharp at work, well respected by her colleagues, and popular among the male employees because of her beauty. Despite this, she has a straightforward personality and is also liked by the female employees. Michaela considers me easy to talk to despite being older, and she often invites me for drinks. Today, Michaela had said, I had something to discuss, so we planned to meet at our usual bar after my fieldwork. Thanks for always putting up with my requests, Michaela said as we clinked our beer mugs together. A beer after work is especially delicious. It feels even better when drinking with Michaela. As we enjoyed our drinks and food, her cheeks began to flush slightly. It seemed like a good time to bring up her consultation. Seizing a pause in our conversation, I asked, So, what did you want to discuss? You sounded pretty serious. I recalled her worried voice when she asked me to hear her out. While she'd often sought my advice before, those were usually lighter topics like being hit on by a superior or being caught in a dispute between female employees. Michaela didn't take those too seriously herself, so I would just listen to her complaints and give my opinion if she asked. However, this time, her voice had sounded unusually serious, which had me concerned. Depending on what it was, it might be beyond what I could handle alone. As I entered the bar we agreed on, I was somewhat relieved to find Michaela waiting with her usual expression. Still, she might have been putting on a brave face, considerate of my work fatigue. She might even be hesitating to talk about it now. When I brought up the consultation, Michaela looked troubled, confirming my suspicions. I waited for her to gather her thoughts. It might be a burden for you, but I can't handle it alone. I can't promise to solve it, but don't bear it alone. If it helps, just tell me. When I said that, Michaela lowered her voice and began, actually. The issue Michaela wanted to discuss was work-related. Karen had handed her a receipt for an airline ticket as an expense report, but it was a first-class ticket. Of course, the company only allows business class for employee expenses, and using first class is out of the question. If one insists on using first class, they have to cover the cost personally. However, despite being a manager and fully aware of this, Karen had given Michaela a first-class ticket receipt. That's a problem. Did you process it? When I asked, Michaela shook her head. Even if I were to process it, it would still have to go through management. Besides, if this gets approved once, I fear it will become a recurring issue. That's true. Should I talk to Karen on your behalf? When I said that, Michaela's expression brightened for a moment, but then she looked down and shook her head. I thought she was hesitant to drag me into the problem or worried about revealing Karen's actions to others, but Michaela had more to say. Actually, I was given this. Michaela placed an envelope on the table and slid it towards me. When I looked inside after Michaela gestured, I saw a considerable amount of money. I glanced inside and then placed the envelope back in front of Michaela. There's something else in there besides the money, Michaela murmured, so I hurriedly pulled the envelope back toward me. As I looked inside again, I noticed a piece of paper. I took it out and carefully opened it. The note contained a brief message. Thank you for everything. How about this? Please continue to support me. The elegant handwriting conveyed an undeniable authority. It was clear Karen intended to buy Michaela's loyalty with this significant amount of money. Of course, Michaela could simply refuse. However, refusing could affect Michaela's future position, and Karen's overall work performance is indeed highly regarded. Many employees are fed up with her arrogant and high-handed attitude. But no one denies her managerial skills and her ability to support her subordinates when it matters. Such a scandal would undoubtedly cause a stir and harm the company. Still, I voiced my honest thoughts. Thank you for confiding in me. Considering the future, keeping quiet might not be the best course of action. Yes, thinking about the future. Michaela seemed to have considered the long-term implications as well. If this incident were swept under the rug, it could set a precedent for Karen to misuse company funds again. Since it was an overseas trip, a first-class ticket is not just double the price of a business-class one. If this continues, what should I do? Michaela, always so composed, now had tears in her eyes as she struggled with this dilemma. Even though I usually prioritize my job satisfaction over the company's well-being, I felt the need to help her this time. I'll talk to Karen about this. I have frequent opportunities to speak with her, so I can bring it up. When I said this, Michaela looked relieved. I took the envelope from Michaela and resumed enjoying our meal. The next day, as soon as I arrived at work, Karen summoned me. I had completed my sales as planned yesterday and had done nothing out of line, so there was no apparent reason for a reprimand. If there was something to discuss, it might be about the self-generation project contract she had cautioned me about earlier. However, unlike her usual manner, Karen had nothing with her this time. I sensed something different about Karen's demeanor. Usually, her sharp gaze pierces through when she has something to say, but today she seemed different. Feeling uneasy about what she might say, I headed to the meeting room. To my surprise, Karen made an unexpected statement. Neil, I need you to be honest with me. Have you been harassing any of your colleagues? Completely taken aback by the question, I widened my eyes in surprise. Harassing? Has someone complained? If so, I want to apologize, so please tell me. I couldn't think of anything I might have done to be considered harassment. Mixed feelings of frustration and the desire to apologize if I had indeed wronged someone welled up inside me. I must have looked genuinely troubled. Because Karen's face became even more complicated. I can't tell you who complained. Just answer my questions. Now, where were you and who were you with after work yesterday? Karen, who normally never pried into personal matters, was now demanding an explanation of my whereabouts. Having nothing to hide, I truthfully said I had been out drinking with Michaela. I expected this to clear things up, but Karen's expression turned visibly displeased when I mentioned Michaela's name. Is that so? And what exactly were you talking about? This was the perfect opportunity to bring up the expense issue with Karen, but the sudden turn of events left my mind in disarray. I hesitated, and Karen sighed in exasperation. You're slow at work but quick to hit on women. We'll discuss this further some other time. For now. Karen abruptly ended the conversation, as if to say the matter was closed, and suddenly announced. Unfortunately, it's been decided that you'll be accompanying me on a business trip tomorrow. The details should have been sent to you via email. So please check them. I have another trip today, so I'll see you tomorrow. Karen seemed genuinely displeased about the trip. However, she seemed resigned to the fact that it was an order from the bosses. Wanting to avoid unnecessary communication, she walked away from me. When I returned to my desk and checked my email, I found the message about the trip. It was strange to be informed about a trip the day before, but the content made sense. This trip was a meeting with the company handling the self-generation project Karen had sternly mentioned. This company also has overseas operations, and the meeting would be held at their overseas branch in a few days. Karen might be accompanying me to keep an eye on me, but it didn't bother me. I had already conveyed everything necessary to the client, and now we just had to wait for their decision. There was no chance of the discussion going off track, and no one wanted that. So, it didn't matter to me whether Karen was there or not. As I prepared for the trip after work, I received a message on my work phone. It was from Karen. The message read, "We need to talk, so please come to the airport early tomorrow." I set my alarm an hour earlier than planned and went to bed. The next day, I headed to the lounge early, intending to wait for Karen, but she was already there waiting for me. I'm sorry to keep you waiting. When I said that, Karen didn't react and instead instructed me to get a drink. Karen already had her drink in hand. I grabbed the same coffee and sat down with her. You said you had something to discuss. What is it? I assumed it was about my dinner with Michaela. And I was curious why I was being reprimanded. After defending myself against any false accusations, I planned to confront Karen about the expense report issue. However, Karen brought up an entirely different topic. I want to ensure the success of this project. Our yearly performance is hanging by a thread, but this contract could push us forward. Her unusual openness caught me off guard, and I couldn't help but ask, "Why do you care so much about the numbers? Is chasing figures all that enjoyable?" Realizing my bluntness, I glanced at Karen to see if she was offended. "Someone like you, living carefree, wouldn't understand. Let's go." With that, Karen left the lounge and headed to the boarding gate. I was thinking we stay more at the lounge. I hurriedly downed my coffee and followed Karen. What surprised me next was the ticket Karen handed me. It was a first-class ticket. One of the perks was not having to wait in long lines, yet Karen had boarded the plane earlier than planned. "Are you planning to expense this?" When I directly questioned her as we stood side by side, her eyebrow twitched. "It doesn't affect your own money, so it doesn't matter. You'll be my slave forever. Just follow me quietly." She snapped back and started walking toward her seat. I wasn't particularly looking forward to it, but my first time in first class was overwhelming. The spacious seats offered a decent amount of privacy. I was amazed that the wealthy turned travel into an experience, but Karen was lost in thought, staring into the distance. How much time had passed? Not even an hour had passed since takeoff when a young flight attendant, looking pale, reported to a senior-looking attendant. "The Captain Alec and co-pilot Troy have collapsed." Her voice reached our ears, and the commotion quickly spread. Even Karen's face turned pale, her eyes wide open. We needed to act before the cabin descended into panic. I stood up and declared, "Leave it to me. I'll fly the plane." They probably thought I had lost my mind. Karen, who had been speechless until now, suddenly blurted out in a panic, "Don't do anything reckless. Nothing good ever comes from your actions." To calm her down, I told the flight attendant, "Please communicate our situation immediately. We need to return." Until a few years ago, I was a pilot in the US Air Force. There's probably no one else here who can land this plane safely. Despite my experience as a US Air Force pilot, I couldn't help but feel anxious. I knew that flying a fighter jet was different from piloting a commercial airplane. However, I needed everyone else to stay calm so I could focus. To reassure myself, I said, "It'll be all right," and headed for the cockpit. What happened next is a blur. I operated the controls in a daze, battling nausea from the tension while feeling the vibrations of the landing through my entire body. In reality, the autopilot did most of the work, ensuring the passenger's safety. The autopilot system calculated the optimal route, altitude, rate of climb and descent, and speed, although it was not as skilled as a top pilot. I will probably never be more grateful for the autopilot function in my life. Once we successfully landed, the tension lifted, and I found myself in a daze. Karen put her arm around my shoulder and helped me to the lounge, where I spent some time calming down. "Thank you for your help, Karen." I nodded to Karen, who brings me a drink and rubs my back until I calm down. "Don't mention it. Actually, there's someone who wants to speak with you." When Karen raised her hand, a familiar figure approached. It was the person we were scheduled to meet for the self-generation equipment project at the overseas branch. The person I had been dealing with was apparently scheduled to attend the meeting at the overseas branch. He had witnessed me heading to the cockpit from the same first-class section. He praised my courage and acknowledged my professionalism. "He has approved your contract proposal and expressed a desire for a long-term partnership," Karen said. It seemed that my approach of offering mutual benefits had earned his trust, leading to a long-term business collaboration. Hearing Karen's explanation, I felt relieved. It felt like validation that proposing mutually beneficial deals was the right approach. Since the plane had returned to the departure airport, the overseas trip was postponed, but we agreed to reschedule the meeting and sealed the deal. Karen and I found a quiet place to talk. "I must thank you properly. I'm sorry for calling you my slave and treating you harshly." "I apologize," Karen said, unusually gentle. Seeing her softer demeanor made me smile. Understanding that Karen had a good heart as a boss, I wondered why she had been so harsh. When I asked, Karen opened up about herself. Since becoming a manager, I thought I needed to act tough to maintain authority. I guess I overcompensated for my insecurities as a female manager by being harsh, she admitted. Karen apologized again, bowing deeply. Since I wasn't deeply hurt, I reassured her with a smile, it's okay. But then, I straightened up, recalling Michaela's concern. I realized it was the perfect moment to address it. Taking a deep breath, I cautiously brought up the topic. Karen, I need to ask. Why did you book first-class seats? Wouldn't business class be more appropriate for a business trip? Karen looked puzzled and replied nonchalantly. You seem fixated on that. Think of it as an investment. There are connections and information you can only gain there. Not satisfied with her explanation, I couldn't help but raise my voice. You can't just spend company funds on such flimsy reasons. There are people struggling because of this. Have you considered the accounting department's perspective? Seeing me unusually passionate, Karen's eyes widened in surprise. Then, she nodded in understanding. Michaela, maybe there's been a misunderstanding. It seems we should discuss this directly with her, Karen said. Although I didn't understand what she meant, I called Michaela as Karen suggested, and the three of us met at an bar later that day. When Michaela arrived, her usual bright expression was gone. It was understandable. The source of her troubles was sitting right in front of her, and she knew Karen was aware of the complaint. Even the most resilient person would struggle to come under such circumstances. Perhaps sensing Michaela's discomfort, Karen began explaining right away. Michaela, I'm sorry for causing you so much trouble with my lack of communication. Karen's immediate apology took both Michaela and me by surprise. Karen explained that she never intended to claim the first-class ticket as an expense. She had given Michaela the business-class ticket receipt and planned to cover the difference herself. In fact, most of the cost for the two first-class tickets had come from Karen's own pocket. But why insist on first class so much? I would have been fine with business or even economy class, I asked, expressing my genuine curiosity. Karen chuckled softly and continued. In places like that, you can make connections that are crucial for business. Today, for example, our client was seated in first class. That was true. Karen often expanded her business network in such ways. Hence her use of the term investment and her willingness to spend her own money. As a woman, I always felt the pressure to deliver more results than anyone else. But through this experience, I realized the importance of solid communication within the company. I'm really sorry, she admitted. Karen had likely faced significant challenges as a woman in a managerial role, driving her to be tough on herself and her subordinates. Seeing Michaela's relieved expression, it was clear that a burden had been lifted from her shoulders. My impression of Karen changed drastically in one day. Later, we received confirmation of the self-generation project, securing a larger and longer-term deal than initially expected. Hearing this brought me a new kind of joy. Previously, I had approached sales with the intention of making mutually beneficial proposals, not out of a desire to contribute to the company or achieve great sales figures. But now, I felt a sense of fulfillment from contributing to the company. Perhaps Karen's passion for her work had influenced me. Moving forward, I intended to continue valuing relationships with clients while also contributing to the company. A few years later, there were changes in my personal life as well. Are you really sure about this old guy? On our way back from our usual bar, I found myself facing Michaela in a park. Michaela had confessed her feelings for me. Noticing her drinking non-alcoholic beer, I had asked, perhaps you are not feeling well? With an unusually serious expression, she had replied, I don't want to get drunk today. To match her, I also refrained from drinking and enjoyed the meal. However, on the way back, she said, I need to talk to you, and called me to the park, where she confessed her feelings. I've never thought of you as an old guy. I've always seen you as someone reliable and someone I love. Hearing Michaela's honest feelings, I finally admitted the excitement I felt whenever I saw her. I had been waiting eagerly for our meetings, though I had tried to ignore my feelings, hiding behind the excuse of our age difference. Life isn't so bad after all, I thought, as I took Michaela's hand and walked towards the park exit.